Hey, folks, it's that time again. It's time for another episode of Getting to Know Dynatrace. I'll be your host today. My name is David Jones. Everyone calls me Jonesy. Feel free to do that. And today, this week, we actually have Bobby Vogler as our guest sales engineer. Hey, Bobby, how you doing?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, hey, folks, as always with these getting to know Dynatrace sessions, and hopefully my presentation is now on the screen. What we like to do is we like to go through a couple of opening segments where we want to talk about what's new. We want to talk about did you know? And then we get right into the best part of today's conversation. And that's the demo. Now, I said conversation. And what I mean by that is it's a conversation. You ask questions as we're going through this demo. So please feel free to ask us questions live as we're going through this demonstration of Dynatrace. These sessions, honestly, I think what makes them so special are the questions that you folks actually give us as we're going through. And typically we've got folks coming in from all over the globe. So welcome everyone to this week's session of Getting to Know Dynatrace. So let's start with that very first segment. The very first segment, obviously, is what's new. And as always with Getting to Know Dynatrace, when we talk about what's new, where's the very first place you should go? The very first place you should go for the what's new, what to find out what's new at Dynatrace is go to our blog. If you go to our blog, and it's real easy to get to, it's dynatrace.com/news/blog. You're going to find out all of the different new things that are going on here at Dynatrace. And today's a good example of why it's important to always keep on top of what Dynatrace is doing. For example, today, one of the things that's new at Dynatrace is today we just announced that our availability on Microsoft Azure as a SaaS offering has gone GA. It's live. It's available now. So what that means is when you go and spin up a instance of Dynatrace, you're not limited to just running that on, say, AWS. You can now run that also on Azure. So if you have a preference for cloud provider where you want that SaaS instance of Dynatrace to run, you've got that option. So this is a great example of some of the new innovations and things that we're doing here at Dynatrace. As a matter of fact, let me just flip into my browser for a second here, and let's actually head over to the blog because there's a couple of other things that I wanted to talk about and point out. One of them is here, as always, are our SaaS release notes. If you're not aware of this, if you're new to Dynatrace, we actually release new versions of Dynatrace every 2 weeks. So twice a month, there's always a new release of Dynatrace that's being pushed live. We really believe in practicing what we preach, and we believe in, really a, sort of a that DevOps, model. And as such, what you can see is that we're always constantly innovating with Dynatrace. So as an example, I'm not going to go through all of this in great detail, but let's just call out a couple of these. If you scroll down into our release notes here, you can see here that we've got, for example, new header and navigation panels for our unified analysis pages. Up here, you can see that we've got this ability now to export data to a CSV from both the distributed trace as well as the multidimensional analysis pages. So that's really useful if you want to take the data that Dynatrace has discovered and you want to be able to put it into a CSV file for doing some sort of analysis or maybe reports inside of something like, say, Excel. And down here, you hear that we've extended our vulnerability tracking. We're providing now on-the-fly validation for SLO timeframes. New feature sets and metrics are available inside of the Dynatrace Hub. And folks, remember, these innovations, these new features and functions, they're coming out constantly with Dynatrace. So every time that we update Dynatrace, you're always going to see, these release notes. So going to the release notes here on the left-hand side can allow you to go back in time and see some of the different things that we've done. Often I get asked to do product roadmap sessions. And one of the very first things I do in those product roadmap sessions is I say, hey, wait a second. Since the last time we talked, did you know about all these great things that we've released? And then I start going through all of the different capabilities that we've released in previous versions of Dynatrace. So going back to this, there's other things here on the blog site. I highly recommend that you get a chance to give it a read. Obviously, I want to call out that this year, Research in Action has ranked us as #1 in observability platforms. So kudos to the team, kudos to our customers, and the folks that voted for us in this evaluation. So we really do appreciate that. All right, so folks, that's a little bit about the what's new. Let's move on to the second segment, which is Did You Know? So in the Did You Know segment, did you know that Dynatrace Davis also includes a digital assistant? So if you're familiar with Dynatrace, we actually have a built-in AI engine. And I like talking about this AI engine a lot because it's really unique. The way that we approach AI here at Dynatrace is very different than what you see in the market. Our approach to AI, it's not like a classic machine learning approach to AI. We went out and we looked at what the US Department of Defense, NASA, the FAA were doing with AI. And what we found was they were using deterministic models of AI because it lends itself to fault domain isolation, which means that we can automatically apply it to applications and the environments those applications are running on at a moment's notice and immediately start connecting the dots. So it's a very practical approach to AI. But our AI also has this assistant built into it. And you can plug this assistant into things like Slack. So right here, you can see on the screen, I've got a screenshot of how this Davis assistant is pushing information into a Slack channel. But you can also interact with it in a voice capacity as well. So let's give this a try. Fingers crossed that my demo is going to work fine here, but let's give it a try and see if it works. So first off, I'm going to start by launching it. Alexa, launch Davis.
Good afternoon. It looks like you have 3 open problems. Would you like to see a list of these issues?
Did anything happen yesterday?
Yesterday, there were 92 problems and 1 is currently active. The most affected application was www.easytravel.com, which experienced 4 problems. 10 problems started in valid date. Would you like to see a list of these issues?
So that's just an example of what this digital assistant allows you to do. You can integrate it with your Slack channel so your teams that are working inside of Slack can just ask natural language questions. And so unlike a human being where you've got to have, the human being actually logged in, this digital assistant is essentially an extra member of the team that's available 24/7, 365 days a year. So at any point in time, you can go into that Slack channel. You could, basically use something like this little voice app that I showed right here, and you can ask Dynatrace questions about your environment. So it's a really useful tool for those, teams that want, immediately to be able to just ask questions and get answers. So that's this week's segment of Did You Know? And now we're going to move into the most exciting part of the Getting to Know Dynatrace sessions, which is demo time. So I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to hand things over to Bobby Vogler here. So, hey, Bobby, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the demo.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Bobby Vogler. I am a solutions engineer here at Dynatrace. Been here for about 2.5 years. Started on the Dynatrace One team, which is one of our services where we can help out on live chat, also give coaching and different sessions like that. Past 6 months, been on the solutions engineer team and loving it.
That's awesome. All right. Okay, Bobby, over to you. Let's why don't you walk us through a demonstration of Dynatrace, and folks that are listening in, I can see right now on LinkedIn we've got almost 80 people that are watching this, which is awesome. Folks, ask questions. That's what makes these sessions so powerful and so useful. So feel free, ask me any question you like. Yes, the fastest land mammal is the cheetah. No, but keep your questions related to Dynatrace topics, please, 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 please. We'll try our best to answer them. So over to you, Bobby.
Thanks, Jonesy. And thank you all for joining as well. Today, I'm going to walk you through a little bit of what Dynatrace is and sort of hopefully answer those questions that you might have. First, going to go over a little bit of what Dynatrace is. And Dynatrace is a all-in-one performance monitoring solution. Typically, in an old style monitoring scenario, you might have different types of monitoring silos or silos that you're monitoring. Some of those could be your end user, your synthetic, your services, and your infrastructure. What Dynatrace is doing is pulling all of this together into this one single platform. What we're seeing with this is going to be less war rooms, less finger pointing, more or quicker problems being sent to you, and then you have those problems being resolved quicker as well. And throughout this demo, I'm going to be going through a few different of the key categories within Dynatrace. One of those would be the ease of deployment. We have the one agent. We have lots of other integrations and extensions to get all the information into Dynatrace as easy as possible. I'll go over that. Another one would be the piece of automation. No more manual labor when it comes to setting up configurations and going through and making sure everything is correct in your environment. Dynatrace makes that really simple for you to get going and get monitoring enabled. And lastly, Davis. Davis is going to be taking all that information and then using that deterministic AI to help give us those root cause analysis problems sent to us. And so our teams can then spend time not having to go back and fix code. We're going to be innovating. We're going to be, pushing those new features out for our applications, making sure our users are getting the best experience out of our application. So first thing to do in Dynatrace would be to go and get the monitoring enabled. So Dynatrace does have our hub. And within the hub, let's say, for an example, you are going to go through a typical installation for a VM. That would be our one agent. The Dynatrace one agent is super simple to get up and going. We don't have to specify what kind of technologies our servers are running. All we have to do is, let's say, for an example, a Linux host. We're going to go ahead and click on Linux, and we have these three commands: our download the installer, our verify our signature, and then we're going to run that with root rights, do a simple app refresh, and we're up and going within Dynatrace. What we don't have to do is tell Dynatrace or tell the one agent what kind of technologies are on this host, how this host is communicating with other different hosts or external third-party services, what versions those technologies are. The one agent is going to learn all of this automatically, and we're going to be getting a lot of benefits from this once we get that installed in our environment.
And Bobby, just to add to this, because it's so simple to deploy, it's like 3 command line arguments. You could use things like Chef or Puppet or Ansible. And what some of our more mature customers do is they actually take this agent and they'll bake it into their machine images. So what that means is in the future, when they spin up a new VM from that machine image, the agent's already built in to that image. So it immediately comes live and immediately starts sending telemetry back to the Dynatrace cluster. So thanks for pointing out how easy it is to install the Dynatrace agent. Like, that Dynatrace one agent install, I refer to it as it's ridiculously simple to deploy compared to other solutions.
Oh yeah, I've had people come up to me and say, it's almost too easy. They're a little suspicious. So it is pretty straightforward. And this Linux example pretty much shows that. Now,
so I saw there was a question that popped up about a microservice monitoring and issue detection. So, in this case, who's asking that? Sumit. So Sumit, we're going to get to that as we go through the demonstration, but thank you very much for the question. So when we talk about microservices and detecting issues related to that, this is very much how we fall into how we monitor things like containers. And Bobby's going to walk us through what it takes for the agent to deploy on a containerized environment. And then he's going to walk us through all of that. So thanks for that question. Keep going, Bobby.
Yeah, sure. And that's a good transition point right here, going back to a containerized environment. So for example, Kubernetes. And this is also a use case I see a lot of people going through when, they're starting their Dynatrace journey. They have these, VMs or hosts on premise, and they want to move into the cloud. They want to move into a microservice type architecture or a containerized architecture. And Dynatrace will help with that. We can do that on-prem, typical type of installation. And then when you're ready to move into the cloud or into those containerized applications, we can also support that and have all that information within Dynatrace, along with that root cause analysis that Davis provides.
Right.
And I do have an example of what we could be seeing when we get AWS involved. So whether it be your EC2 instances, other cloud services, your RDS instances, your databases, your Lambda functions, Dynatrace automatically makes this page for you. We can go in here, take a look at your entire AWS account just to get that high level view on one page. And then of course we can dive in here and take a look at all the other services, Lambda functions separately, and then also look at that performance for all of these. Now, that would be the first step, would be getting Dynatrace up and going, whether you're installing the one agent on an EC2 or a typical VM, or you have something in AWS that we're getting the integration involved. All of this information is then going to be taken advantage of within the Smartscape. Our Smartscape is going to be our sort of topology mapping, where we can see all the different microservices, all the different services, and how they're interacting with each other. Not only the services, but also those processes, where they're coming from, and hosts, and on top of that, that application, how our users are accessing our website. Now, with the Smartscape, going back to how we install the one agent, we don't have to tell the one agent how to look at our environment. The one agent will identify all of these different connections for us. So for an example, if I zoom in here a little bit, we have a Go service, and how is this Go service reaching out to other entities in our environment? Are these going to be third-party resources? Are they going to be something that we have on-premise or in the cloud? Dynatrace One Agent is going to take care of all of this for us automatically. And in this view, we're getting that sort of that top-level topology view. What I can even do is take a look at the individual hosts and see how that sort of stems up into our very top of our application. So from here, we're seeing that vertical and that horizontal type dependencies for our environment. We have a host. What kind of processes are living on that host? And in turn, what kind of services are involved with these processes? If these services are being triggered directly from an application, we would also see that at the very top level here. So just want to reiterate, all of this Smartscape topology right here is taken care of for us automatically just with getting that one agent installed.
Awesome. Hey, all right. So, Bobby, we got before you get into the next part of the demo, we've got another question here. This is an interesting one. Can the system monitor the global internet for social media and other instances of scammers cloning a company website to phish and scam people? So that's a really interesting question. I don't think I've seen that question before. So ultimately, can Dynatrace monitor the global internet? That's not exactly what we do. We can monitor specific components, specific things that are out there in the internet. Like we've got synthetics, and that can monitor anything that has a publicly available address to it. We don't typically watch social media for events. That's not really what we do. However, interesting, because your scenario is, what happens if somebody clones a website, and if Dynatrace happens to be part of what they clone? Because let me explain it this way. One of the things that we do for our real user monitoring is we place a JavaScript on every response to every web page that gets loaded. If a scammer was to try, in fact, actually to clone your site, and all of a sudden our JavaScript gets caught up in that, what would happen is Dynatrace would actually see a beacon coming in from anyone coming that incorrect site, that cloned site. So Dynatrace would actually be aware of it, because that beacon would be coming back to a Dynatrace instance. And so in that scenario, technically Dynatrace would very likely be able to say, hey, you got a bunch of people that are hitting some pages that are showing up in different domains, but the Dynatrace beacon is pushing back, responses to your instance of Dynatrace. So in that scenario, it could capture that. And I've seen actually customers using our user session approach to actually uncover when they do have malicious activity. And you're going to see a lot of great new features coming out from Dynatrace when it comes to AppSec related to attack blocking, which is coming out this fall. You're going to be seeing and hearing about other things that we're going to be doing related to logs that are going to be coming out this fall as well. We can't go into too much detail because we don't want to, spoil the fun, so to speak. But you can bet assured that AppSec type use cases are definitely in our mind. All right, Bobby. So let's get back to it. Let's get right back into the demo.
Yeah, of course. So just cover the Smartscape. Now we understand our topology of our entire application. You can have multiple applications in here. You can have tons of different services, processes, and hosts being monitored. Right now, I have a small application selected. This is my Captain Hipster shop. We have a management zone functionality where we can sort of separate information on different pages in Dynatrace. So right now, I'm just looking at my Captain environment application. Now, this is really important for what is to come, what's coming next. The Smartscape, we're learning all the different dependencies. We're learning how each entity is sort of talking to each other within your environment. And that really gives us a lot of power when it comes to the Davis AI. The Davis AI now knows, what entities are talking to each other. And we're going to be getting that causation-based instead of a correlation-based AI and root cause analysis that's going to be sent to us in a problems page just like this. So within our problems page, all these problems here were generated by Davis. And we also get to see some of the severity and impact level of the actual issue. So if a problem spins up, Davis is going to be looking at key metrics when it comes to all of those different layers in the Smartscape, the services, applications, processes, and hosts. And Davis will be automatically baselining and sending out alerts to us automatically if an issue arises. We don't have to go in here and set manual thresholds for specific entities. Davis will be learning from our environment how it works and so it behaves normally. And if any of those odd occurrences appear, Davis is then going to be triggering these problems with the addition to a severity and impact level. So one of the key things of getting a problem fixed is getting the problem in the right hands of the person or team as quick as possible. So when that problem is generated, we're going to be sending that to a individual or a team based on different severities, based on different types of entities that are also impacted in the problem as well. Now, I have a few problems that I'm going to showcase here, and that sort of goes through exactly what we're talking about with Davis and the root cause analysis. Now, in this problem, we can take a look at the right-hand side here. Close to 16,000 different entities were analyzed just to get to this root cause of a problem. And we can think of all these different entities as the entire Smartscape. You saw all those entities on the services page and all the other entities on the host section. Think of that as the entire Smartscape and everything that Davis and the one agent is monitoring. From this 16,000 different entities that were analyzed, Davis analyzed and said, okay, only 2 affected applications, 10 services, 2 pieces of infrastructure were a part of this problem. If you're also involved in DevOps, we also do have SLOs that we can set up within Dynatrace. And in this case, 6 affected SLOs were a part of this problem as well. Not only are we getting the impacted entities, we're also getting a business impact analysis. So when this problem was open, which was about 26 minutes at about 2 to 2:30 in the morning, 771 people were impacted for this problem. They felt the pain in which this problem was inflicting on the website. Now, I talked a little bit about how Davis gives baselines to our environment automatically for us. So how was this problem triggered and how can we see that? Well, we have the 2 impacted applications here. And in this case, the Davis baseline was breached and we're looking at a 302 millisecond response time before the issue occurred. And now we're getting an increase in almost 400% up to 1.46 seconds for the response time for 5 user actions, including all browsers, all geolocations, and all operating systems.
So, hey, Bobby, one of the things I just want to throw in here is, when we look at these response times inside of Dynatrace, often the values look, really minuscule, like really small amounts. Like this one happens to be a second. That's pretty egregious. But the one above it is, it's also closer to like 0.8 of a second or 800 millisecond sort of variation. The thing is, folks, is that to a human, when we look at things, those response times, we might say, oh, I can ignore that. That's a really quick amount of time. That may seem really quick. But the problem is that when you start compounding this against thousands of requests, tens of thousands of requests, this starts to add up. And this starts to have impact on the infrastructure that you're running your application with. And that's why even the smallest values, if they're out of whack and they're not performing the way that you're expecting them to, they can add up and cause damage either to the user experience, or it can cause costs associated with the compute that's needed to run the application. I've seen situations where a company was able to shave off hundreds of thousands of dollars of their operating costs because they were able to actually reduce the amount of time that it took people to log out of their user session. By logging out of their user session, it saved them a ton of money because they didn't have to invest in new infrastructure to support additional load. They just basically were able to optimize the way that their current application ran so that they didn't have to go out and buy more compute resources to scale up. So these little numbers actually make a big difference for the business. Sorry, Bobby, keep going.
No, that's perfect segue into what I was going to sort of go into next. And yes, Dynatrace can help you identify that. And one of the big things would be, saving money. So what we can do here is actually look at the visual resolution path for Dynatrace here, and we can see the entire stack of every single entity that was sort of part of this problem before it was sent out to us. And if I play this back, we can play it back and we can start to see things going red. That indicates a problem on there. If I skip to the very top here, actually, we have 69 ongoing events in 14 different components. Now, in a traditional monitoring solution, those 69 ongoing events would mean 69 different emails, 69 different alerts. All these different metrics were breached that you had to also set up manually. And those 14 different components that Dynatrace included into that one problems page. Now, within all of these different ongoing events, I did notice at the very bottom here, we had a piece of infrastructure. This Windows host was a part of the problem. Now, is it the root cause? Is this actually what was causing all of these slowdowns on the user actions? And we can sort of verify that. So if I go back here to the main problem page, we have a root cause section. And in this case, it was a service, not a piece of infrastructure. And I'm going to go down into this root cause a little bit, and we can sort of dig into what exactly was causing this issue. But before I go into that, one common question I get on this page a lot is that, was anything configured on this page? Is this all out of the box? And essentially that answer would be yes. The only thing that I did on my own was that I included a deployment event into Dynatrace. Now, Dynatrace has a very robust API. We can always push information into Dynatrace. We can pull information out. And in this case, I pushed in a API call telling Dynatrace that I have a new code deployment. And in this code deployment, I included some of the other information that I would like Dynatrace to know about. So like the approver, my Ansible Tower integration, also my Git commit and the owner. And Dynatrace recognized this and also put this into the problem card, because Davis was like, hey, this service that we have a problem on recently had a deployment change. So Davis put that into the problem card here. This deployment event is the only thing that I had to do on my end to get this problem card sent to me, besides just install the one agent. Everything on here is automatically taken care of for us by Davis and the one agent. On top of this deployment event, if anybody's interested in auto rollbacks or anything DevOps, we also had this problem sent to our playbook to automatically roll back that change. And in this case, only having this problem open for about 26 minutes with no other manual, any manual work. All this was done automatically for us.
So folks, let's just take a second, and this is almost like one of those drop mic moments. Let's just take a moment and just walk through what Bobby just explained for you. All right. So here's Dynatrace. It's you lay down the agent. It automatically discovers your environment. It automatically starts baselining everything. When there are performance bottlenecks, when there are errors, when there are exceptions, what happens is Dynatrace creates these problem cards. These problem cards then tell us what's going on. And in this particular scenario here, Dynatrace detected a problem. It fired off a ticket into ServiceNow. The folks on the ServiceNow side, either through some automation or through the owner here, were able to trigger a remediation routine with Ansible that rolled back this deployment change, and Dynatrace saw that it fixed the issue and closed the problem. How's that for automation? Like, what Dynatrace is doing is becoming that hub to allow you to drive that automation. Now, the other thing,
back to my, sorry,
I was going to get there for a second, Bobby. Actually, because we were talking about that visual resolution path. I love that visual resolution path when it gets attached to the problem cards, because it's kind of like Dynatrace is giving you an automated virtual whiteboard of what's talking to what and how things are interrelated during this problem. And if like most organizations that are, not using Dynatrace, they probably have some level of monitoring on every part of that stack. So they're using something to monitor their OS. They're using something different to monitor their processes. They're using something different to monitor their applications. They're using something different for their web, the web servers. They're using something different externally. They're using something else for monitoring their logs, as an example. And every single one of those monitoring tools in this example that Bobby just showed us would be lit up red. But none of them would be telling you what the root cause of the issue is, because all of those tools are independent of each other and have no understanding of the context of what's being monitored and what the relationships are. And that's where that Davis AI and that dependency mapping becomes such a key component of driving what it is we're able to do. Bobby, great job walking us through that. Keep going.
Thank you. Yeah, DevOps are one of my favorite pieces of Dynatrace, because the sky's the limit. You can really get lots of really great use cases by using Dynatrace, integrating with your DevOps teams. And now that we have an understanding of the problem, we know what kind of entities were impacted. We know how many users were impacted. We saw the visual resolution path of how that problem evolved within our environment. And now we also get to see that root cause. And that's going to be a custom service, or sorry, a service, which is that check destination in our environment. Now, I want to get on top of this problem as fast as possible. So what Dynatrace is going to lead me to is to the response time page, where I, as a developer, can go in here and sort of get a deeper dive into what was causing this issue. Now, I want to go back and remind people that I did mention the infrastructure on that playback. We did see pieces of the infrastructure, but that root cause is a service. And I'm going to dive into a little bit on that in a second here. And what I'm seeing on this page is where the problem is sort of, laying at. We're not seeing any database usage. We're not seeing any other interaction with services or queues. In this case, we're mainly seeing that service execution. and in particular, that code execution. This blue bar would represent what the response time or that code execution would be before the problem started. And then this red bar would represent what we're seeing now that the problem is or was ongoing at the time. And as a developer, I can dig down even further, going into the method hotspots. Now I can see where exactly that code execution is taking the most time. Is it going to be for locking, waiting, disk, or network I/O? And in this case, it's a majority still in that code execution. And with the Dynatrace method level hotspots, we can take a look at what exactly was contributing to our stack trace the most. And we do have this calculate session index, which is contributing 97, almost 98% of all the stack traces here in this problem. And I can sort of dig down and see how this is being called by all my other methods. And in this case, I'll go and sort of scroll down, and we're seeing the same type of method being called one after another, pretty much. And if I go down far enough, there's my check destination. That was my root cause for the problems page. And what my developer accidentally put into our code base was a loop. And this ties back to that infrastructure problem. Because we're seeing a higher code execution on this service, that's going to lead to more memory, more CPU on that infrastructure. And it's a very common use case where people can just say, okay, let's just push more CPU, let's push more RAM onto our cloud environment to relieve that stress on that host, when the actual underlying issue is on the code. So going into here, we can tell our developers, let's take care of this in our next deployment or roll out a fix before we push more infrastructure into that cloud environment.
Yeah, it's a great example, Bobby. And that's exactly what we were talking about before. This is an example where, a slip up happened on the code side, right? Developer made a mistake. They slipped something in the code. And next thing you know, the application's running really wonky. It's chewing up all sorts of resources. And compute resources aren't free and they aren't cheap. When you scale them up, they're expensive. And, situations like this, you could try fixing the problem by just throwing more CPU at the issue or throwing more memory, whatever, but more resources at the issue. And you can keep throwing those issues or throwing those resources at the issue, and you're not going to resolve the issue because it's a code level issue. And Bobby showed how we were able to find that within like 3 clicks off of that problem card. Within 3 clicks, boom, you got exactly what's causing the issue. So now, if you think about the war room that would have occurred when this problem occurred, the folks on the network side, they're off the hook, right? The folks on the database side, they're off the hook, all right? The ops team are off the hook. This is a dev issue. So that's one of the things that Dynatrace really brings to the table is it eliminates long, costly war room type scenarios. Everyone can get on the call and basically look at Dynatrace, and Dynatrace is going to give them some indication as to what team needs to be involved with this. So that's a great example, Bobby. So let's take a pause for a moment, Bobby, because we've had questions stacking up. We got questions queued up. Okay, so let's talk about this question here. Ahmed, in this system, are you developing a data set for malware attack traces captured from hypervisor or VMM of cloud? I kind of want to ask you the question, Ahmed. Have you been listening to some of our roadmap presentations internally about some of the things that we're thinking about doing? Because that sounds suspicious. That almost feels like a planted question. So, hey, listen, folks, I'm being coy about this because, again, we do have some new capabilities that are coming out this fall. And this one functionality I'm thinking of that directly addresses what Ahmed's asking about is related to attack blocking. And one of the ways that we're doing it is we're using our vulnerability detection. So Bobby just showed you how we can actually get visibility right down into the code. We know what libraries are being loaded. We know which ones are in use. We understand the context of where those libraries have dependencies that are related to each other. And so as part of this, vulnerability detection, I won't go into too much to spoil your part of the demo here, Bobby, on this,
Sure.
But what I will say is, and this is directly related to what Ahmed's asking, is we are most definitely coming out with a capability that will look at requests that are coming in. And if it's a known JNDI attack, if it's a known CMDI or a SQL Server injection type attack, if it's part of a known vulnerability, we're going to be able to detect that request and then block that request automatically if you want. This is very cool stuff. I'm getting ahead of myself. It's in preview right now for some of our customers, and it will be GA coming out this fall. But it's going to be super cool, and it's part of our AppSec functionality. So thank you for that question, Ahmed. Let's see. Will you be doing these sessions again? Yeah, we do them every couple of weeks. So if you came in halfway, not a problem. Come on back. We'll be doing another session in another couple of weeks. And then we've got another one here. Oh, it was the so Bobby, let's go back to that one of those original questions that started at the beginning of the session, which was somebody was asking us around microservices and issue detection. Thank you very much, from Sumi.
Mhm.
So let's go back and let's talk a little bit more about monitoring containers, microservices, and that sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, for containers, let's talk a little bit about Kubernetes. We have our Dynatrace operator, where it's very similar to our normal one agent, where we're spinning up a node in your Kubernetes cluster and then monitoring everything within there. And when it comes to that, let me actually go into our services page, and we can see sort of how Dynatrace splits all of our different services or our microservices into these separate different types of pages right here. And let me go ahead and actually let me go back to our problem that we had before, our check destination problem, because this was a pretty common service in our environment here. What Dynatrace is doing is we're looking at all of the different services that are sort of, doing different things within our environment. And within these services, we have different, requests for our microservices that Dynatrace will also be monitoring. And one thing on top of Davis is that we're looking at all of this information. We're looking at the different service level metrics. We're looking at the different request level metrics. For an example, that response time, failure rate, CPU, and throughput. And we can take a look at all of the different requests for our service. And if I scroll down a little bit here, in this case, we just have the one request coming from this service. If you have a sort of a monolithic type of architecture, you might see a lot of different requests coming from this one service. Or if you have a microservice, you might have 1 or 2 or 10 different requests coming from this particular service. So what Dynatrace is doing is that we're looking at every single piece along that route of when a user clicks on that button. We're going into the process, we're going into the service, and then we're also going down into that request level information. And Davis is with you pretty much throughout that entire route as well. Same thing for containers. We're also going to be getting that Kubernetes monitoring. And if I go into my infrastructure here and sort of go into my Kubernetes deployments, I can take a look at what we're getting on the Kubernetes side of things. How is my cluster working overall? I can look at my namespaces, all of my different deployments. I can look at the infrastructure type of metrics with my different resources. All this information is pretty much given to us on this page, which is a sort of a higher level page looking at our entire cluster. But we can also drill down into all the workloads, all the pods, all the namespaces. And something with Kubernetes as well is that we also get those events shown to us, and then we get those alerts sent to us as well.
And so, Bobby, one of the interesting things that we can also do with Kubernetes type environments is we can add a little bit of metadata. If you add a little bit of metadata into your Kubernetes build, we can then use it with our release management functionality as well. So this is really cool, folks. If you actually just add some, just a little bit of extra metadata to your Kubernetes build, then Dynatrace can actually we have this functionality that we call release automation. And this effectively allows Dynatrace to track different versions of your Kubernetes builds over time, and then use it to help drive automation from the standpoint of Dynatrace could become effectively a quality gate. So if your application meets specific performance requirements, let it through. But if it fails specific performance requirements, fail it, push it back, but then give the developer some idea as to why it failed so they can go in and tweak it and fix it. Again, it's all about driving automation. So keep going, Bobby. What else do we got?
Sure, yeah. I did want to bring back something you mentioned actually a little bit ago that is a key part to these different problems pages. Dynatrace makes it super simple within a few clicks to get down to the root cause of an issue. Now, if I go back a few pages here, I actually clicked off the problem that I was wanting to look at. Here we go. Dynatrace makes that super simple for you to actually go in there and find the issue. So in this case, very similar problem to what we had before. This is more on the application side of things. Still 16,000 different entities analyzed and scanned by the one agent, Smartscape and Davis. But in this case, 4 applications and 2 services, no impacted infrastructure. And we can sort of take a look at what was happening too. We have a bunch of synthetics. So synthetics are something that Dynatrace also provides. We can test out our different use cases, HTTP or browser monitors as well. But in this case, we have some JavaScript errors that were being reported to us from 2 particular user actions, all browsers, all geolocations, and all operating systems. Now, like I was saying a second ago, Dynatrace makes it really easy to just drill down into the issue. So if I just want to get to that root cause information, I have the problem that's being sent to me. I'm either a part of that application team, or I'm responsible for this particular easy travel service, which is the root cause of this issue. All I have to do is click on this analyze failure rate option, and that's going to take me to my individual microservice. It's going to take me to the failure analysis page, where it's going to show me what exact error that I was getting, what kind of requests, or in this case, just one request that was causing that issue or relating to that issue, and the root cause exception for this problem, as well as any types of logs that are also associated with this problem. If I wanted to dig down even further, I can click in on the details and see that exact exception for this particular problem. Now, from that problems page, I think I clicked maybe 2 or 3 times, and this is the information I wanted to see. And now I can start working on that and getting that fixed as fast as possible.
Hey, Bobby, you know what? Just leave it on the screen for a quick second, because I also want to show something and talk about this. So, with Dynatrace, you get this really deep level visibility that Bobby's been doing a great job showing us. But one of the things that also you want to take into account is PII data, security, that type of thing. In this scenario, not only did Dynatrace automatically detect the problem, but you'll notice that in the actual response that we're looking at here, there is some pieces of information that are obfuscated. They are like basically starred out, because Dynatrace has determined that that type of information is potentially PII data. And that's one of the great things about Dynatrace, is that it can be secured in a fashion to make it GDPR compliant, meaning that we can use Dynatrace to monitor the most sensitive applications that are out there. So when it comes to security and privacy and that type of thing, Dynatrace also has you covered. So keep going. Great job, Bobby. We've got like 6-7 minutes left. So what else do you got to show us?
Well, I got the other side of the coin when it comes to digging into this problem. Going to show that real user monitoring. We got that problem sent to us, but what does that actually look like for a user? And going back to the problem, so now I understand what we're seeing. That exception. We're also getting this weird E1234 error on our page here. So what does that actually mean for the user on their end of things? How can we actually get some more insight into that? Well, Dynatrace has what we call real user monitoring, or RUM. Our real user monitoring will be capturing user sessions from the people who are going onto our application and we can take a look at exactly what they were doing on the website and, how maybe this error was impacting them. So a common use case is that maybe you have a support team where people will call up or say, hey, I have some issues. And, now it's the support team's job to actually see if the problem is, first of all, there. We want to make sure that the problem is actually actionable, and we can confirm that. And we want to see how we can fix that. So let's say, for an example, we have a user calling up, and I believe it was Tom right here. Tom called up and said, hey, I have some issues with the application, not able to check out, and, I want some help with that. Well, because we have that real user monitoring, we're capturing Tom's user session. And in this case, Dynatrace automatically flagged that as a frustrating session because there was some errors or slowdowns on his user experience. I already have his session pulled up here, and we're getting lots of great information here. In the first top section here, we're looking at metadata that we're capturing from the user's end. If that user is logging in or we have that email, we can capture that either on the front end or back end. So we got his name. We're able to search that within Dynatrace. And there's also a ton of different business value when it comes to these user sessions as well. This is going to be our mock sort of travel website where people log into, they book a flight, and we're getting a lot of other metadata sort of pumped into Dynatrace from our application, which we can then filter on different sessions. We can take a look at, I want to see all my sessions from people who are part of my loyalty status platinum or gold or silver. All these different things are great for business teams to also get insight onto how our users are actually using the application and see how they can improve the website performance for users as well. So now we know who's calling up. We got Tom. He's having an issue. Now, what exactly was Tom having an issue with? I can take a look at all of the different user actions that Tom has sort of went through in his time on my application, and I can go through and scroll through this. Or if I was wanting to see exactly what Tom was doing, we can do a session replay, which is like a video playback. We're not going to be recording the user's screen. It's more of a DOM element change that we're going to be capturing and sending back to Dynatrace. Just like what Jonesy said a little bit ago, totally customizable. By default, everything is masked, so don't have to worry about that that information. Dynatrace capturing that personal information. But within this session right here, sort of skipped by it here, but Tom went on the application. He filled out his credit card information. He clicked on that submit payment, and now he's getting that error on this page, which is that same error that we're getting on the problem card. So within session replay, we're able to verify that, yes, this issue is occurring on Tom's session. And in the future as well, we can get that resolved by drilling down into the actual, into that actual user action which he clicked on and that failed. I'm going to go through this real quick. If there is any questions, please feel free to also post that in the chat on this, or Jonesy, please feel free to cut me off at any time here.
Well, actually, we do have one last question. It looks like, does Kubernetes consume DDU, or is it possible to see in the infrastructure mode? Orlando, thank you very much for that question. Depending upon how you connect to Kubernetes with Dynatrace, it may or may not consume DDUs, right? So you can connect directly to Kubernetes via Kubernetes' own API, and in that case, we would be pulling in metrics directly from a Kubernetes deployment, and in that case, it would consume DDUs. However, if you place a one agent, like a one agent operator or one agent running on the underlying host where the Kubernetes is running, in that case, the metrics are all going to be part of what the one agent has discovered. So it really does depend on how you're connecting to that Kubernetes instance. Typically in that infrastructure, sort of connecting to the API, that is really, that's the part that would potentially consume DDUs. So thanks for that question. There we go. Is the RUM data imported or read from a host or service running one agent as well? Oh, that's an interesting question. So the RUM data is actually what happens is like mechanically. Let's talk a little bit about the mechanics of how this works. When Dynatrace sees an inbound request for, say, a web page, what will happen is Dynatrace will automatically inject a JavaScript as part of the response. That JavaScript includes a beacon. Now, normally that beacon is going to send the data back to the server where the Dynatrace 1 agent had the original request had come from. That's normally how things will work out of the box. However, with our real user monitoring, you do have a lot of options in how it gets deployed. You can do an agentless deployment where you're just simply putting the JavaScript out onto your page using whatever mechanism that you want. And in that case, you can choose a different URL for that beacon to return the response. So you do have a lot of flexibility in terms of how that JavaScript gets injected and then how that response gets consumed by us. And it's like I said, there's like options available to you. So, hey, listen, folks, we're at like 2 minutes to the top of the hour. Bobby, did you have any very last minute things that you wanted to wrap up on?
Yeah, one quick thing, and this is a pretty important feature or very important concept when it comes to this last user session right here. I wanted to mention that we do get the real user monitoring aspect on how a user is sort of looking at our website, but we can also tie that all the way back into our services. So within the waterfall analysis, I get to see all the things that are loaded on the front end. And then once again, I can go all the way back into the individual distributed trace and see for this exact user how that issue was sort of corresponding to the back end. Tying that front end user action all the way to the back end is something that you'll also get within Dynatrace.
You know what, Bobby, that always just blows my mind because, I'm an old school IT guy. I've been around for quite some time. And the idea that I can, within a single platform, be able to say, here is the page loading in that user's browser. And now I can click a button and I can say, here I am loading the page in the user's browser. And now I'm tracing that back through the web server, through the app server, through the actual middleware into some messaging service, all the way back to the database or even a mainframe. That 100% blows my mind. Great job, Bobby. So, hey, Bobby, thank you so much for that, this demonstration. I've had a blast. We had great questions as always. So, folks, if you new to Dynatrace, if you've never tried Dynatrace before, please feel free to go to dynatrace.com/free trial and just sign up for a free trial. It's not going to do anything goofy like ask you for a credit card or anything goofy like that. You can take the full version, everything that Bobby showed us today, you can take it out for a spin on your own instance. So please feel free to sign up for that free trial and give Dynatrace a try. And with that, we're going to call a conclusion to this week's session of Getting to Know Dynatrace. In a couple more weeks, we'll be doing another session. I invite you back to that one. Come join that. And with that, again, Bobby, thank you so much.
Of
You
course.
did an amazing job. And folks, with that, have a great day and enjoy your weekend. So take care, folks.
All right. Thanks all.